Good morning, students. This is our literature chapter, chapter 5, The Last Truck Ride. In this chapter, there is a truck driver and his assistant. This story is written by Ruskin Bond. The name of the driver is Pritam, and the name of his assistant is Nathu. So, The Last Truck Ride is a story by Ruskin Bond. It is a short story about Pritam, the truck driver, and his assistant Nathu. So, Pritam is of 50 years and he is a sick man. He has a truck of his own and he also has an assistant, that is, a boy of 12 years named Nathu. Pritam drives recklessly on the narrow mountainous roads to the limestone quarry. He is in the habit of driving fast and he makes 2 trips every day, carrying the limestone quarries from the blasting site to the depot at the bottom of the hill. Nathu, a 12-year-old boy, is from a far-away hilly village. Because of poverty and scattered resources at his village, he has come to the town to work so that he can run his family that lives in his village. So here, Nathu is working with Pritam as a cleaner boy. He cleans the truck of Pritam and daily he gets Rs 10 as a wage. Let us now read the chapter and find out what happens when a stray mule suddenly appears on the road. A horn blared, shattering the silence of the mountains, and a truck came round the bend in the road. A herd of goats scattered left and right. The goat herds cursed as a cloud of dust enveloped them, and then the truck had left them behind and was rattling along the stony, unpaved hill road. At the wheel of the truck, stroking his grey moustache, sat Pritam Singh, a turbaned Sikh. It was his own truck. He did not allow anyone else to drive it. So, from these lines, we come to know that Pritam is the driver and he has his own truck and he is a reckless driver. And he blared the horns just because he liked to hear the music of it. He is also a turbaned Sikh and he loved his truck and he never allows anyone to drive his truck. And while he was driving, there were a herd of goats that scattered left and right. Every day he made 2 trips to the limestone quarries, carrying truckloads of limestone back to the depot at the bottom of the hill. He was paid by the trip and he was always anxious to get in 2 trips every day. So in these lines it tells us that he always make 2 trips and he is paid for that. Sitting beside him was Nathu, his cleaner boy. Nathu was a sturdy boy with a round, cheerful face. It was difficult to guess his age. He might have been 12 or he might have been 15. He himself did not know, since no one in his village had troubled to record his birthday. But the hard life he led probably made him look older than his years. He belonged to the hills, but his village was far away on the next range. So from these lines we come to know that Nathu is of 12 years and he is a cheerful boy and he is from a village, far away village, and he is working with Pritam as a cleaner boy. Last year, the potato crop had failed. As a result, there was no money for salt, sugar, soap, and flour. Nathu's parents and small brothers and sisters couldn't live entirely on the onions and artichokes, which were about the only crops that had survived the drought. There had been no rain that summer, so Nathu waved goodbye to his people and came down to the town in the valley to look for work. Someone directed him to the limestone depot. He was too young to work at the quarries, breaking stones and loading them on the trucks. But Pritam Singh, one of the older driver, was looking for someone to clean and look after his truck. Nathu looked like a bright, strong boy, and he was taken on at 10 rupees a day. So here we come to know that Nathu is from a small village and he comes to the town in order to run his family. And he gets rupees 10 per day from Pritam Singh, who hires him to clean his truck and see after his truck. That had been 6 months ago, and now Nathu was an experienced hand at looking after trucks, riding in them, and even sleeping in them. He got on well with Pritam Singh, the grizzled 50-year-old Sikh who had well to do sons in Punjab, but whose sturdy independence kept him on the road in his battered old truck. So Pritam has got two sons and they live in Punjab, and Pritam will also get retired soon, after which he had to go and live with them in Punjab. Pritam Singh pressed hard on his horn. Now there was no one on the road, no animals, no humans, but Pritam was fond of his horn and liked blowing it. It was music to his ears. One more year on this road, said Pritam, then I'll sell my truck and retire. Who will buy this truck? Said Nathu. It will retire before you do. Don't be cheeky, boy. She's only 12 years old. There are still a few years left in her, and as though to prove it, he blew the horn again. Its strident sound echoed and re-echoed down the mountain gorge. A pair of wild fowl, disturbed by the noise, flew out from the bushes and glided across the road in front of the truck. Pritam Singh's thoughts went to his dinner. So here in these lines, the writer tells us that Pritam was very fond of hearing the horn of his truck. So he simply at all presses the horn. Whether animals and humans are there or not, he just used to blare the horn in order to hear the music of the horn. And then he tells the boy that he will get retired soon and he would be selling the truck away. And as he blared the horn again and again, the wild fowl were disturbed and came to the middle of the road. Haven't had a good meal for days, he grumbled. Haven't had a good meal for weeks, said Nathu, although he looked quite well fed. Tomorrow I'll give you dinner, said Pritam. Tandoori chicken and pulao rice. I'll believe it when I see it, said Nathu. Pritam Singh sounded the horn again before slowing down. The road had become narrow and precipitous, and trotting ahead of them was a train of mules. As the horn blared, one mule ran forward, one ran backwards, one went uphill, one went downhill. Soon there were mules all over the place. You can never tell with mules, said Pritam, after he had left them behind. The hills were bare and dry. Much of the forest had long since disappeared. Just a few skaggy old oaks still grew on the steep hillside. This particular range was rich in limestone, and the hills were scarred by quarrying. Are your hills as bare as these? Said Pritam. No, they have not started blasting there as yet, said Nathu. We still have a few trees, and there is a walnut tree in front of our house which gives us 2 baskets of walnuts every year. And do you have water? There is a stream at the bottom of the hill, but for the fields we have to depend on rainfall, and there was no rain last year. It will rain soon, said Pritam. I can smell rain. It is coming from the north. It will settle the dust. The dust was everywhere. The truck was full of it. The leaves of the shrubs and the few trees were thick with it. Nathu could feel the dust near his eyelids and on his lips. As they approached the quarries, the dust increased. But it was a different kind of dust now. Whiter, stinging the eyes, irritating the nostrils, limestone's dust hanging in the air. The blasting was in progress. So, Nathu often talks about his poverty and village life and the environment, the nature over there. Nathu has a walnut tree before his house in the village, and that gives 2 baskets full of walnut every year. The place now where Nathu works is different from his village. Here he sees the blasting of the mountain just for the sake of a limestone, and the mountains are left barren and dusty. Pridam Singh brought the truck to a halt. Let's wait a bit, he said. They sat in silence, staring through the windscreen at the scarred cliffs about 100 yards down the road. There was no sign of life around them. Suddenly, the hillside blossomed outwards, followed by sharp crack of explosives. Earth and rock hurtled down the hillside. Nathu watched in awe, and as shrubs and small trees were flung into the air, it always frightened him, not so much the sight of the rocks bursting asunder, but the trees being flung aside and destroyed. He thought of his own trees at home, the walnut, the pines, and wondered if one day they would suffer the same fate, and whether the mountains would all become a desert like this particular range. No trees, no grass, no water, only the choking dust of the limestone quarries. Pritam pressed hard on the horn again to let the people at the side know he was coming. Soon they were parked outside a small shed where the contractor and the overseer were sipping cups of tea. A short distance away, some laborers were hammering at trucks of rocks, breaking them up into manageable blocks. A pile of stones stood ready for loading, while the rock that had just been blasted lay scattered about the hillside. Come and have a cup of tea, called out the contractor. So now Nathu thinks that in his village there are trees, grass, animals, vegetables, and varieties of species, but now where he live and work has only barren mountain with no trees, no grass, no water. All these are getting over because of the sake of commercial need of limestone, and they are cutting down the mountains and trees, etc. And again Pritam blare his truck. He gives a horn so that people coming across him would know that he is coming. Despite getting warning from people, Pritam drives the truck recklessly and harshly. Well, one day after loading the truck and with 4 laborers on it, Pritam drives for the depot. He drives fast and with out of nowhere on the narrow road, a strange mule appeared in the middle of the road, and Pritam could not control. He loses the control, and as a result, the truck carries off the road and it rolls twice before it was stopped by a large tree. Laborers jumped off the truck and Nathu finds himself among the nettles. He was smarting all over, but he wasn't really hurt. His first impulse was to get up and run back with the laborers. Then he realized that Pritam was still in that truck. If he wasn't dead, he would certainly be badly injured. Nathu skidded down the steep slope, calling out, Pritam, Pritam, are you all right? And there was no answer. Then he saw Pritam's arm and half his body jutting out of the open door of the truck. It was strange position to be in and half out. When Nathu came nearer, he saw Pritam was jammed in the driver's seat, held there by the steering wheel, which was pressed hard against his chest. Nathu thought he was dead, but as he was about to turn away and clamber back up the hill, he saw Pritam open one, two, blackened, swollen eye. It looked straight up at Nathu. Are you alive? Whispered Nathu, terrified. Then Nathu came to the help of the driver. And when the contractor and his men arrived, it took them almost an hour to get him to a hospital in the town. He had broken collarbone, a dislocated shoulder, and several fractured ribs. But the doctors said that he was repairable, which was more than could be said for his truck. So the driver, that is Pritam, was taken to the hospital by the contractor. And later on, Nathu comes to the hospital to see Pritam. The truck's finished, said Pritam when Nathu came to see him a few days later. Now I'll have to go home and live with my sons. But you can get work on another truck. No, said Nathu. I'm going home too. And what will you do there? I'll work on the land. It's better to grow things on the land than to blast things out of it. They were silent for some time. Do you know something? Said Pritam finally. But for that tree, the truck would have ended up at the bottom of the hill, and I wouldn't be here, all bandaged up and talking to you. It was the tree that saved me. Remember that, boy. I'll remember, said Nathu, Ruskin born. So now in the hospital, though they were injured, they talk about the importance of trees in the hill. Then Pritam decides to go back to Punjab while Nathu to his village. So, from this story, it is clear that the author is concerned about the losing beauty of nature, the trees and the hills. Because of our selfishness, the home of the wild animals are losing. As we cut down the trees, the homes of the animals, the birds, are losing. And another important fact is sacrifice. Nathu goes back to his village. So, this is the story of the last truck ride by Ruskin Bond. And students, I hope that you have understood well.